Now, of course, we're not talking the same, level of power, but isn't that the point? Isn't that the whole thing? Is that you got to look at all the different variables when you do your saw setup. The sprocket is just one piece of a puzzle. The chain and how it's ground is just one piece. For example, I can have a more aggressive raker and pick up a little bit of cutting speed, but maybe I wouldn't be able to pull an 8-pin. I'd have to go back to a 7. You got to balance it all out, With the 288, if I had a 24-inch bar, if the trees were a little bit smaller, I could probably go up to an 8-pin and get the chain speed back, and it might be a more efficient machine in that class of wood with that bar size, but not with a 28. So you got to balance that. You got to balance the trees you're cutting, how hard the trees are, the cutting characteristics, the chain, how you got that ground, bar length, power, all that stuff. But the big takeaway for me today is the 288 pissed me off. Wouldn't restart, and it sucked down a lot of fuel, and that guy right there broke. I could still run it, but when you have 1, 2, 3 like that, I go back to the tried and true, and that's a 395. And I don't know if you noticed, it did not disappoint, but it also gave us an opportunity to talk about saw setup for those who kind of gloss over it. So it's like, there's an old saying, and it's worth saying here. If you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So if your gig is sharpening chains, you're not going to focus on the sprocket. You're not going to focus on the bar. You're going to focus on getting your chain right? If you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And yeah, you can change the way you have your grind to be more aggressive, to take advantage of the power with a 7-tooth, and you might even approach taking a stock chain with an 8-pin. You know what I'm saying? The balance between how it cuts and the chain speed and all that is something that you can mess with. For me, stock chain, they cut good. And the reason why I stick with a stock chain for now is because I have yet to come up with a grind where I can plunge cut as smoothly as the stock ones. And I'll sacrifice a little bit of speed for that smoothness so I don't get hurt. I'm out here by myself. And yet again, I'll sacrifice some of the weight. 3 pounds is a lot. I'd rather have this saw right here all day long than the 288, even though it's 3 pounds heavier. Combination of the pulling the 8-pin, it's faster, it's using less fuel per tree. I don't know if it's using less fuel per hour, but it's certainly using less fuel per tree. And the setup is working. Of course, you got to understand that I screwed around with that saw little by little by little now for 6 months, and got it to a point where, without having to go to the machine shop, I have an efficient tool for dropping trees, even though it's a little bit heavy, and I like it. What's going to happen after 6 months with that saw? It's starting out 3 pounds lighter. It still has good displacement. After some messing around with it, I like its standard handle versus the full wrap. But again, because of the speed, I'll sacrifice a little bit. Combination of I like it, and plus it cuts so much easier for me, and it restarts. I'll sacrifice the weight and the full wrap over the 288. And that's the takeaway. But also, this is a mature build. Basically, I've tweaked and tuned and played with it, changed the piston, muffler mod, do the things you do, messed around with bar length, chains, sprockets, just basically come up with a system that works for me. And after maybe 6 months of messing around with that 288, I might come back and say, something? That's a better saw. But right now, no, not even close. So anyway, let's go for another one.